Well, hello everybody. Simon, brilliant to be with you. Brilliant to have everybody here, and of course, as Berta was saying, Simon is the reason that we're all here. That we've all got these friends, we've got these mates. You know, you're the reason I know Berta, for example. I've come down here a few times, met all of her team now, brilliant team, even though it's evolved all the time. And I just want to go back before we start talking about the book, which is brilliant, by the way. As soon as you open it, the photography will strike you before you even read a word, and that's very much on brand, isn't it, with what Simon's about to talk about, I'm sure. But my first experience with Simon's brand, about 2010, and I'm commentating the racing. I think I'm out in Lombardy, which is one of my favourite races, probably my favourite race of the season, Giro Lombardia. Not because the season's ending, not because I like winter, just because of all the imagery and the colours around it. And Simon and Rapha produced this jersey. I can't remember the name of it, but it was this wonderful sort of three-panel jersey, sort of colours that you're wearing there, you know, autumnal colours. And I just thought, do you know what? I won't just wear that on the bike, I'll wear it out because it looks cool. Like a lot of people probably, when you saw the gear at the start, and that's, you know, all testament to everything you've created.
The funny thing is that that's my favourite race as well. Lombardy is definitely the best race, best one-day race. And that jersey I still wear every week on a Wednesday.
I should have brought mine. We could have been brothers up here.
Funny.
Right then, let's get on to the book. Congratulations first. Published author.
Well, self-published. So the great thing is when you've published about 20 books under the same Rapha imprint, you can, if you say you're going to do your own, they're not going to say no. You know, Fran wasn't going to say no at Rapha, and so we did it. And I wanted to do it ourselves because I didn't want any publisher saying, well, you've got to shorten it, or you shouldn't cover that bit, or you've really got to sort of focus more on this or that. I just thought, no, I just wanted to say what I want to say. And there's lots of people who, I know their stories, I want to tell their stories, but I want to do it in my way. So it's total megalomania. I had this opportunity to do that. And if you ever get a chance to write your own book, do it, because it's very cathartic. So now I'm feeling sort of completely empty. It's all come out, which is great.
Well, you can see it. I mean, I think there's copies available at the end as well. I have to say that this is not my reading season. The only thing I normally read from February to November are start sheets and notes. Even I opened it and had a good look at it. It's absolutely brilliant. The photography really jumps out, and the title jumps out as well. The Extra Mile. Why the extra mile?
Because it's the whole idea. I mean, most people here ride bikes a lot. I know lots of you do. I've ridden with most of you. Riding a bike is about the extra mile. It's not about shortening the ride. It's not about making it easy. Yeah, well, exactly. But you build up to it, don't you? You build up to it. And if it was easy, we wouldn't do it. And it's not about going downhill. It's about earning the downhill by going uphill. And I think in life is the same. Anything that's worth doing is worth doing really well and going the extra mile to make it really, really good. And that was always the idea with Rapha. Every single thing had to be as perfect as it could be, because cycling's so perfect, and the rest of the world looked at cycling as something a bit shoddy, a bit sort of low rent. They don't anymore, it's now expensive, but people look down on cycling, and I was like, no, this is the greatest sport in the world, so it deserves the extra mile. And that's what we've tried to do at Rapha ever since.
I'm looking at the cover there. There's a photograph on it, but I mean, it doesn't look like you. What's going on here? Because you're a published author, and you don't even put your own picture on the front.
Well, it's still a bit weird because Rapha's not about me, and Rapha isn't me. It's much better than that. And I think I've probably got an ego as big as anybody else's, but this is my friend Dominique, and Dominique's 10 years older than me. That was nearly 20 years ago, 19 years ago. So he was probably, 48 years old. So, he's not a young spring chicken. He wasn't like a young whippersnapper. His eyes are not kind of unlined. He's got the world in his face, but he's fucking cool. And he'll ride you off his wheel, and he descends like a demon, and he raced for the French amateur team, and he also built a couple of businesses, sold them for a lot of money. He's delightful. He's French. He was a bit of a sort of hero of mine, and he was our first model. And I just thought, that's what I want Rapha to be like. And I always looked up to him, even though he was 10 years older than I was.
So an inspiration on the bike and in business for you, I guess?
And well, in business not so much. He did language school, so right. And I don't know how he did it. And maybe he wasn't the same mentality as me, but on a bike he was just fantastic. And he called me a cyclotouriste. He still calls me a cyclotouriste. I'm not. I'm a wannabe racer. But to him, I was a tourist, and probably most of us tourists, really.
Yes, I'd imagine so. And there might be some exceptions. I'm sure there's some pretty good people on bikes, especially the lot that go out the weekend in the RCC. I've seen the pictures. 20 years then, 20 years in the company. There's a real long list in there of thank yous and just, I don't know, you've got little paragraphs about different people in there as well. If you had to name one person without whom it couldn't happen, and you can't name your wife because that'd be cheating, who would it be?
There's nobody in the company that it couldn't have happened without that person, because everybody played a part, and nobody played a part that was just so important that it couldn't be replaced in some way. You know, I could be replaced too. The inspirations before the company is probably more the essential bit. And I worked for a guy when I was 25 who was a buccaneering business guy. He started an agency in London called Interbrand. I don't know if some people here work in branding, I'm sure, because we all work in branding now, don't we? You probably almost work in branding. He started an agency called Interbrand and started this whole brand consulting thing, which I went and worked for him. And this guy was basically unstoppable. I mean, the extra mile would definitely have taught to him. He basically believed you could do anything. If you were smart and driven, you could achieve anything. And if you get knocked over, you just get back up and carry on. And he got together a group of about 20 or 30 young sort of 20-somethings. We're all quite bright, we were all quite ambitious. And he said, right, we're going to do this. And we set up sort of different ways of doing consulting and different ways of valuing brands and all sorts of things. And he just said, you can do it. And so we went on and we basically worked all over the world, valuing the world's biggest brands. And I was presenting to the board of IBM, age 27, in Armonk in New York, telling them their brand was worth $18 billion at the time. It was a lot of money. And that was because of John Murphy, this guy. So I mean, without him, I wouldn't have had the sort of self-belief, probably. That's where it comes from. A lot of it comes from self-belief and misplaced confidence, I think.
There's a fine line between the two
there
things.
is, and arrogance and egomania.
Well played, John Murphy, anyway. Yeah. Well done. Let's go back to the beginning then. First thing that jumps out at me when I open that book is the business plan. I think it's dated about 2002. When you see it, it really will jump out. It's confident, as you were just talking about. There's plenty of self-belief there. Where did it come from? What was the genesis of Rapha for you?
So I had a very conventional upbringing, I suppose, and a very supportive parents. And my dad worked for some entrepreneurs. And he was an accountant, he wasn't an entrepreneur himself, but I was around these guys who set up businesses. And in the 1980s, not many people are old enough to have been around growing up in the 80s. Who was growing up in the 80s? Yeah, you may remember that. I don't believe that. But when I say growing up, I mean in your teens. There was a whole period where we were told that being an entrepreneur was like the thing to do. And commercials on TV featured sort of like entrepreneurial people, and it was kind of like, oh, go and get it. And politically, we had Thatcher and Reagan, which was the downside of that, but it still promoted this idea of being an entrepreneur. And so I had it in my blood. I wanted to do something myself, and my parents always supported me to sort of do stuff. So I guess I had that. And I'd become a consultant, and if anybody here is a consultant, it's a great thing to do, but you're never really responsible. You just give advice, and then the client messes it up. That's normally what happens. And I got really frustrated being a consultant, because I used to go to a place like Volvo, where I worked for 2 years, and I loved the company more than the board of directors of Volvo. I was sure that the things that I wanted them to do came from the heart, and they were just these kind of unimaginative robots who just didn't do the right thing. So they didn't take your advice. And sometimes they did, sometimes they didn't. And for most consultants, that was okay. But for me, it was like frustrating as hell. So I just realized in my 20s that I had to be a principal. I wanted to be a principal, not an agent. And so I started looking in my 30s for something to do. And I looked at lots of agency ideas, and they were never quite right. I looked at some product ideas, which were a bit weird and didn't ever sort of amount to anything. And at the end of the evening, I'd get out my cycling books, because by then I'd realized that cycling was this incredible thing that I was in love with, and the rest of the world thought it was shit.
When did cycling start for you then?
When I was in my teens, I did a fair amount, and I started watching the racing in my teens. So it definitely started with racing, which is quite interesting. It didn't start with doing it. It started with watching it on Channel 4 when it started in '82. I was 16 then, so that was perfect. So we used to come home from school, watch the racing, and I just fell in love with it. So I used to buy Winning magazine and all those old. So you'd scour bookshops. If you went abroad on holiday, you'd look for the amazing magazines. They had magazines about cycling. It's incredible. So I fell in love with it then, and then I got back into it when I was in my 20s. And by then I was kind of I already had a child, I think, or I was married, and so it didn't really fit in. It was kind of, I had to make it work, and I was never quite fit enough, but I loved it, I absolutely loved it, and started riding abroad a lot. So I'd amassed this little library of cycling books, which is still in Rapha HQ actually, and I don't think anybody at Rapha HQ knows they exist. And if they do, they don't give a shit about them because they're books. They're books with pages and stuff. Who looks at those? It's all on my phone, isn't it? So I amassed this library. I used to get it down onto my kitchen table and look at it and go, right, fuck, why doesn't it look like that? And why can't I tell a story about Abdu Japarov or Bernardino in the snow in Liège-Bastogne-Liège? Or I had all these stories. And then I go to the bike shop, and the bike shop was awful, and the people who worked there didn't give a monkeys about the customer or the sport. It seemed to me they might be fast, but they'd have no idea. I was like, this is so bad. And I was a skier as well, and I love skiing. You go to a ski shop, it's like, this is beautiful, this is so nice, and go skiing, and it's like you feel like, I'm pretty cool. Skiing is a high sort of status occupation. Cycling was just like shit. So I wanted to address that because it was a much better sport.
You wanted to lift cycling up and put it
totally
with popular sport.
And still do, and it's still, well, in the UK it's going through a really bad patch. But it's amazing to be talking to the number one commentator about cycle sport. That's a bit of a sort of, I've got goose pimples because it's like, it's Rob Hatch. And he's got his nice voice on, not his really dirty northern voice.
Or shit, Olympian. I'll speak slower otherwise.
So that's where it came from. So it came from a burning passion for cycling and wanting to do my own thing, and the belief that I could do it.
Fantastic. There's an extensive list of things. Again, you have to buy the book to have a look at them, because I said they're super confident, they're super clear, you had clear ideas. Do you think you achieved everything?
Way more.
Wow.
Yeah, way more.
Well, that's something to be hugely proud of.
Yeah, it is. I mean, the business plan was sort of, I have to do this thing, I want to see it live, because cycling needs it, I want to show it. And the first page of the business plan is an essay about glory through suffering. I mean, if there's something designed to put off an investor, it's glory through suffering, because, I mean, still people don't understand what that means, and people are still a bit like, oh, suffering, do we have to do that? It's like, yes, you bloody do. I probably thought it would get to maybe 10 million quid turnover if I was really lucky, and it was with a fair wind, and we did everything perfectly, and we soared through that after a few years. So, yeah.
How do you think the winds helped, certainly in Great Britain, because obviously they were getting pretty strong, weren't they, during the late 2000s? Yeah,
they definitely helped, but by then we were already reasonable size. So I think we'd made lots of mistakes by then, and we'd got going, we'd got momentum, and then the tailwinds came, and it was just phenomenal. It just took off. There's a couple of days. There was a tube bombing in 2005 in London, which was pretty horrible, but everybody the next day got on bikes, because you couldn't get to work if you didn't get on a bike. And I remember riding to work at Rapha just going, oh my God, everyone's on bikes. This is what it could be like. And then 2007, the Tour de France came, and London was awash with people on bikes, and every shop in Bond Street had a bike in the window. It's like, cycling, this is it. It's finally breaking through into popular culture. And the Tour's now coming back in 27, which would be incredible.
I was going to ask you, actually, do you think that we're going to
we need it. We bloody need it, because we need another. And I think it's going through a bit of a bad patch in the UK and globally, and the sport itself is not in rude health. But the long-term prognosis is still really good. I mean, we're going to win. We're definitely going to win. People need to wake up to it and leave aside their foolish sports or games.
We'll come back to the sport, because I want to talk in a minute about what you think about the health of the sport as well. It's an interesting discussion. I'm sure most people are bike racing fans here. Have a beer. That might help thing. We're sitting here in Mallorca. In that business plan, it says we'll open up stores in London, Paris, Barcelona. Why not Barcelona? Why
did it say Barcelona?
Did it? I don't know.
Did it? It might have done.
It might have done. Oh, it's London, Paris, Peckham, London, Paris, Barcelona.
But interestingly, it said London, Paris, and it probably said New York. because that's where cycling should be,
Right.
and not in, you know, I don't know, Swindon and Harrogate and somewhere else.
Accrington?
You know. Definitely not Accrington. Sheffield, maybe. Well, I used to come. I've been coming here for 25, 30 years, and it's obviously the home of cycling in Europe. There are some rivals now, but you know, it's still the best place to ride a bike. And we did our first one of our early photo shoots was in New York in 2007. So really early on, we didn't have much product, and we based ourselves, I think, in Selva or Poyensa or somewhere up that way. And I remember the shoot there was, in fact, no, we stayed in Fornalutch, near your place.
Beautiful.
Yeah, really beautiful. In this beautiful house. And the photographer, Ben, his assistant was called Taz, and one of our models was called Guy, and they met on the photo shoot. And one of many Rapha couples who've gone on from then. Guy started a ruler, and and they produced the book. So Guy edited the book, and Taz produced the whole thing. So of course, I mean, Mallorca's in the spine, basically. Most of this book has got Mallorca running through it. And we came back to do many other photo shoots. And I kept coming back here to ride and would come here and see Guy and Taz. And we had a flat here for quite a long time and still would love to. So yeah, it's a natural. Mallorca's a natural. But at the time, there weren't cycling cafes, really. There were cafes that were great. And there was a couple of bike shops. But this was quite a brave thing when we first opened, I think.
You can look around the square now. I mean, one exception.
Yeah, there's a few.
Exception. You've started a bit of a trend.
It's a good place. So there's a theory called retail density, which people here probably don't realise who are opening these things, but people will spend more money if there's more competition from the same category, because you're going to look for a bike jersey. So you'll look for one or two, and you might buy two rather than one. Everybody prospers with retail density. So yeah, copies, there's lots of copycats, but that's good. We like that.
It's flattery, isn't it?
It's
flattery.
Yeah.
The marketing is something that is obviously in your blood. It's in your professional career. You talked about it already. The marketing is very different, isn't it? Or it was very different from anything else. And I guess that was one of your big USPs, wasn't it, when you started? Things like Rapha Continental, you know, one of the first things. Explain us where that came from.
Yeah, so I'm a marketing guy, I'm a brand guy, and I don't know if anyone else here is a brand person, but I suppose we're all brand people. But for me, marketing is everything. You know, the definition of marketing is how to satisfy customer needs, identify and satisfy customer needs profitably. I mean, that's what business is. That's what business tries to do. So all of business is marketing, and all of business is brand. And anybody who tries to sort of put it in a pigeonhole or give it to a little department somewhere won't be very good, because it needs to be everything: the culture, the people, the way you answer the phone, the products, the marketing, the communications, the whole thing. So for me, that's what marketing should be. And the best brands in the 90s, when I was doing my schooling, I suppose, in that world, were Nike and Apple. And at the time, they were just head and shoulders above any other brand globally in terms of how they went to market. And it's because they took a whole company approach. So I had to do the same thing. So people at Rapha hopefully would back this up if you ask them, but everything resonates. Everything is an opportunity for the brand to come across. And we have a point of view about everything, and I certainly have a point of view about everything. I guess Berta probably does, Ali probably does. It's really important that everything you do, you know, the type of coat hooks you use, or where you put the label, or how much you charge for a coffee, everything is an opportunity to communicate what you're about. So that's what I wanted Rapha to do. But what I didn't want to do is to do conventional marketing, conventional advertising, because I'd have to put it in bike mags and they were horrible, and you know, you're on thin paper, and that's not, and it's thin, it's just a sort of very simple, boring transactional relationship with the customer. So instead what we wanted to do was, our marketing strategy from day one was do interesting stuff and have something cool to say. That's what it used to be. And I don't think it is anymore, but that's what we used to do. So we would go off and make brilliant little films, and we'd go off and we'd write an essay about something, or we'd put on an exhibition about something. We'd take a physical space and we'd put on a race, or we'd do roller racing, because it was just an interesting thing, and people would talk about it and be like, oh, Rapha equals interesting things, and it's quite cool and it's stylish, and the products are quite good too. So that's how we used to do it. And the Rapha Continental you mentioned, which is probably one of the things I'm most proud of, a guy wrote to me and said, American cycling's broken, it's all about speed, and it's all, you would know this, Ali. At the time, it was all about just brutal speed and obsession with Europe. And he said, but actually riding in the US is amazing. We've got all these incredible back roads and these dirt roads. Now it's called gravel, but it used to be called dirt. And why don't we make a whole series of films about people going out, regular guys, but quite badass guys and women, going out and riding these incredible places and show America and the world what American cycling can be. And it was kind of a bit before gravel, and they rode 23C tyres and steel bikes, and they were very cool people and told amazing stories. And that said more about what Rapha was about than any commercial or any page ad could do.
I'm getting a sense listening to you that it's about community, adventure, like you said, doing something different. Talking about, you thought that cycling was different before you started this, but making it cool. And I suppose this is an example of that, isn't it? The events are an example of that. Festive 500, probably the most famous. I mean, Turkey, Only Fools and Horses Christmas special, Box of Quality Street.
This is a very English view of Christmas.
That's Festive 500, that's Christmas, isn't it? That's the law.
Yeah.
Home Alone maybe as well.
I think things like the Festive 500, Women's 100, the challenges that we do, which we've now been doing for 15 odd years, most of them, they just talk to cyclists about what cycling is in a way that cyclists can kind of understand and get a bit deeper. And that's what Rapha's always done best. When we're at our best, when we are at our best, that's what we do, is we explain to people what cycling is, and they go, oh God, yeah, that's what I think, or that's what I want to think, or that's what I want to be. So the Festive 500, doing 500 kilometres, when Graham set it up, who worked in Rapha product, he did 1,000 kilometres. And we thought, well, we can't tell people to do 1,000 kilometres. I mean, that's just ridiculous. In 8 days? I mean, there's no way. And even 500 is too much for most of us. But but it's extra mile. Again, it's not, don't take the easy road. And I always used to say internally, if there's amazing semi-flat, slight declining road down the valley that looks beautiful, and then there's a little sort of windy road with slightly sort of misformed pavement going up the side, always take that road. Always take that road, because you know what that one's like, and you'll get there really fast and you won't even feel the pedals. And what's the fun in that?
It's funny actually, where I live in Soya, over the other side of the mountains, there's a 4-kilometre road that goes from the roundabout all the way down to the port and back. And there's people who do laps of it every night. And I just cannot get my head around why you wouldn't want to ride up the road, at least go to the Yan and turn round, or go to the top of the Coy de Soya and turn around. One, you get a better workout. Two, it's miles more beautiful.
It's so beautiful. That's one of the most beautiful climbs in the world, the Col de Soya, isn't it?
People are spoiled, they don't realise it.
They don't realise. Yeah, I'm lucky enough to have a second house in Oxfordshire, in the country in London, and countryside. And there's a guy called Short Shorts. So cool because he wears very short shorts. And he basically comes through our village every day. I mean, it's great that he does it every day, but he does about 40 minutes, and he'll go down one road, turn around, come back, down another road, then come back. He does the same thing every day.
That's what the turbo train is for, isn't it?
It's like human turbo. He can't be married, is my only thought. But.
Well, I can't comment on that. Yeah. Talking about those events, that community, sense of belonging, I think, to a brand, that seems to be more as important as the product, surely.
Definitely. And I think we all knew back in the day, in the mid-90s, wherever you were in the world, if you saw a cyclist, you'd wave or nod, or just put your hand off the lever or whatever. And people don't do that all the time anymore, which is such a shame. Partly because there are more cyclists, and that's a good thing. Yeah. But there's a civility, and you knew when you saw that person and they were braving the hideous roads and the people who hated them, because people in cars in London hate you, and they still do. You knew that you had a similar experience. And I think that's a wonderful thing, isn't it? It's great to be part of something. It's great to be part of a group, particularly when it's about something active and something where you've done something hard and you don't have to talk about it because you know.
Yeah. Before moving on from the events then, 500, you talked about Rapha Continental there. Is there another event that maybe I've missed out that you might be equally as proud of or more proud of? Something that jumps out from your career where, we've organised that and that was bloody brilliant.
There have been lots of things. I mean, the Nocturne, I don't know if anyone here went to the Nocturnes we did in London and a few other cities, inner city races, and we just thought, okay, we'll put on a race. And when you have a team in the UK, you have an amateur team, you are obliged to put on a race just to give back to the community. So people normally put on a race in Saffron Walden or Lincolnshire or somewhere in the middle of nowhere. Nobody comes. It's just for cyclists. There might be a bloke with a whippet at the finish line.
That's only in Yorkshire.
Who remembers? Yeah, exactly. Who remembers Tom Simpson? And we thought, no, this was the early days of the RCC. We thought, no, we can't do that. In fact, it wasn't. It was way before the RCC. We thought, no, we can't do that. We had Rapha Condor. Let's put on a race, but let's do it in the middle of London, and let's make it a nighttime kermesse. And we'll have all the bars open, and people who don't know about cycling will come down and go, fucking hell, this is amazing. How hard can it be? Which is a phrase that I use quite often. And it turned out it was quite hard, but I met some people who are really good at those things, including Fran Miller, who now runs Rapha. And we put it on. And for many years, we had this incredible night, and we used to get 5,000 to 10,000 people. And we got the best riders because Fran knew Cav and whatever else. They would come down and they'd either be in the crowd or they'd be racing. It was really incredible, and there's nothing like it now. I mean, there's a few inner city races, but nothing with that sort of buoyancy.
Not in London. That was the time I was living in London as
Yeah,
well,
right.
actually.
You probably didn't go, did you?
I was probably too busy working.
I bet Daniel Freed went.
Maybe.
Maybe
I
not.
don't know. I'd have to be in Berlin for that one.
Right.
We'll ask him afterwards. We'll get him on the blower. Let's go to the world where our paths cross to pro cycling, road cycling, sponsorships, because that must have been another huge step, if maybe a daunting one for the company as well. Team Sky, major sponsorship. Internationally, of course, you've been with Rapha Condor before as well and things like that. But this is a whole new level, isn't it? And you're going there and you're winning Tours de France and things like that. What did that do for the brand?
Oh, it was huge. It was absolutely, I mean, it almost broke us. Almost broke me, definitely. But it was amazing. I mean, it's all your dreams come true, isn't it? It's like if you're a football fan and suddenly you're working with Man United, or, well, maybe not Man United, maybe Preston North End, Barcelona or something. You know, it's incredible to go in. It was only, 9 years from starting Rapha to being on the backs of the best riders in the world at the Tour de France and winning the Tour de France. It was pretty incredible. But as you'll see in the book, if you have the book or get a chance to look at it, it was a monumental operation. And, you know, like many things that Rapha did, it was not very commercially savvy. We believed that if we did things right, it would pay back, and it definitely did. But we threw the kitchen sink at it. So pretty much everybody at Rapha worked on Team Sky. That was how it worked. And I said to Dave Brailsford, we'll put the whole company behind you because that's why we exist, you know. And we don't want to be a niche brand in a niche sport anymore. We want to be a big brand in a really big sport. So let's do this together. And it was a horrible learning curve. First year was a nightmare. And I've tried to be really frank in the book about things that went wrong, because lots of things go wrong. And we messed up on lots of things. But it was a really good learning exercise, and by the end of it, we were humming, and we knew how to make really good products. So by then, it was good.
Wonderful. That sort of obviously helped the brand move on. I imagine it took a heck of a lot out of the whole company, like you say, with every resource dedicated to it. Moving on, then you have to move out of it.
I should tell you a bit more about it, actually, I suppose,
Yeah.
shouldn't I? Because I said it's hard, but I didn't say what that meant. So there's and tell me if I've told this story a few times before, but imagine you're working with your heroes, and you're at the greatest stage. So Saturday is Milan-San Remo. So think back to 2013, Milan-San Remo. Me and Slate, who's my marketing guy, we're sitting on my sofa, got a table of like Italian things to eat, some salami and some artichokes and stuff, got some vermentino to drink, and maybe got a Negroni on the go, got the TV turned on. I think it was probably on Eurosport. We were watching, you weren't commentating this before.
I was working for the Italian TV, actually. I was on the whole feed back then. Yeah.
That would have been so much better. If we could have had Italian commentary, we would have done. And we're waiting. This is like, our team, they're going to be racing the Primavera, the most amazing race. It's like an opera. It's going to be fucking incredible.
Long one.
And it's always 300k plus. And they came over the Ticino Pass, and it was snowing that year, which was an absolute disaster. So everyone was freezing their bollocks off. And they were allowed to get into the coaches the other side of the Turchino. They went into the bus, they were allowed to change their clothes, a bit like happened in Paris-Nice.
Yes.
Because you commentated on, didn't you?
Yes,
But
that
everyone
was
was changing
interesting
their,
last week.
or was it in? It might have been in Tirreno.
Tirreno, they did change, yeah. They
Yeah.
did change.
On
But
the side
in
of the
Paris,
road.
we had a stoppage
Right.
on the side of the road, but you know, there
So
was
it's a
nowhere
bit like
for the
that.
riders to go, basically.
So we're thinking, that's okay, that's good. Little did we know that the rain jackets we'd given to the team weren't that good. They were a bit flappy. And Gabriel Rash, who had created the Gabba jacket for Castelli, who was a DS and a rider he was an assistant DS and a rider at Team Sky, and he was working on that race, he wasn't riding. He'd put a Gabba on everybody's seat in the coach.
Oops.
So they came out, and me and Slater, they're kind of slightly drunk at this point, and the team are doing quite well, and Ian Stannard's at the front. It's like, okay, this is brilliant. Hang on a minute, what's he wearing? Fuck, what the hell is he wearing? And he was wearing a Gabba jacket, as all the team were pretty much. I think maybe most of the team. And we're screaming at the TV, what? Take it off. I got Fran on the phone, said, Fran, who was running the operations for Team Sky at the time, what the hell's going on? She said, I don't know what's happening. so no one knew what was going on. And there we are in our perfect moment as a brand, seeing Ian Stanley's a legend, wearing somebody else's product. And eventually he took it off, I think, on the Cipresser in the end, and then it was okay. But
He wasn't going to be on the camera if he'd crossed the line first.
no, he's a good pro. He wouldn't have done that. But it was gutting. And most of the world, I think it was one of the moments when the Gabba jacket got proper awareness, and it kicked it on really well. And it's a good product, so fair enough. But that sort of thing really hurt. But, yeah, they weren't all like that.
No. Well, obviously there were some amazing moments. Again, another thing that really stands out in the book is you standing on Mont Ventoux, Chris Froome's winning. That must be hairs on the back of your neck. It's like, we are winning the Tour.
Yeah, Ventoux with all your friends. Favourite mountain in the world, favourite place in the world, most mythical, most historic place. Your teams basically bossed the race all the way down the Rhone Valley for 200 kilometres in horrible heat. And then you hear them on the tannoy coming up. You can hear what's happening, and one by one they're leading Chris Froome up through the forest, and eventually he comes around the corner. He's just broken Nairo Quintana, and he's wearing the yellow jersey and Rapha bibs and full Rapha kit, and goes past you, so you can almost touch him. And you're there with all your friends and some of your customers and all your shareholders and everything. It's like, oh my God. I mean, that's it. That's 2013. That could have been game over then. I could have retired then. It would have been, we've won the Tour de France. It was Chris Froome, but he's a nice guy. He didn't win like Pantani would have won, but he was okay.
There was a difference there, wasn't there?
But it was the Tour de France, and it was our team, and we were there, and nobody else was there. There were no other brands there. Nobody thought to turn up on Mont Ventoux. These days they probably would, but yeah, it's amazing.
Brilliant. Pro cycling then, where is it now? You've already expressed that it's not in the best place, it's not in rude health. What's your view then? What's going on in pro cycling and what should go on?
Well, I'm just a fan, so
It's made for fans, isn't it? That's the idea.
Well, it is, and that is, I guess, the central thesis. Well, you've been in some of these conversations, I think, online, haven't you, with me and Lionel and others. So what do I know? Next to nothing. I'm just a fan who really cares about it, and if you look at the value of the sport, it's flatlined for many years, while other sports have been growing. So that's not
financial
good.
value. This is
The financial value, yeah, absolutely. The population who watch the sport is aging, which is a really bad sign. And it's basically an incomprehensible, arcane, niche, mad thing, which I'm really disappointed by. And it's back to where I started Rapha and just thinking, well, it's better than this. It can be better than this. So I think it's in a bad way, and somebody needs to get their hands around its neck and force it not into the modern world in terms of making it like baseball or basketball or whatever the current best sport is supposed to be. Retain lots of what I'm a romantic. I love all the history. I love it, but I don't want to watch Tirreno and Paris-Nice on the same week. I'm one of the few people who does watch both of them because I record them and watch them, and I can watch it on the feed now, which is great. Most people couldn't give a monkeys about either of
and
this.
they might not have time.
And they haven't got time.
That's one thing.
I'm retired. I've got loads of time.
Where I sit, we sometimes, we're talking all day, and we don't appreciate that people don't have time to watch every kilometre.
Yeah. So my favourite sport is part of the sport is cyclocross, and I think the site is not for everybody. and it's definitely not to be ridden by everybody, but the cyclocross model is so much better. It's a 1 hour race and it's full gas action on a closed circuit, and it's technically impossible. And the fans, you get to see them go past 8 or 9 times or 10 times. You see a women's race and a men's race and a junior race. You've got beers, and it's exciting.
Can't remember all the races by the end of the day, usually.
Probably not. And you've got the same people riding pretty much every week, and so you've got this narrative that evolves, and the competition between the riders. If you've not watched cyclocross this next winter, make it your goal to watch cyclocross, because it's amazing.
Preferably in Belgium.
Definitely go to Namur or go to Coxside or one of these places. So I think that's really good, and I think Flanders and the Flanders Classics races, the one-day races where they're fairly much closed circuits, they do the same circuit multiple times, so it's easier to televise, easier to spectate, easier to control. That's the model. So why don't we reconstruct a calendar of those things? And if we have to get rid of some, Paris Tour, in fact, Paris Tour's now got some off-road stuff, so that's okay.
It has, yes. But then again, depends who you ask. I mean, I like it.
Brian Smith doesn't, but Patrick Lefevre doesn't.
Brian Smith doesn't matter, don't you?
But they're very old, so. No, and I think today I watched Grand Prix de Nain, and then there was Nocera Corsa yesterday, and there's most of the best races now have some off-road and some on-road, and that's what racing should be. To me, racing should be on and off-road, and it shows better bike handling, and it's much more exciting for the fans.
How do we get there then? Because there's this thing in the middle called the UCI, and they don't usually like relinquishing control. Neither does the other thing called ASO.
I don't think UCI is a problem. I think UCI would go along with the right solution. I think ASO, who I know very well and have worked very closely with, and they do a very good job of what they do.
I have to say, from a broadcast point of view, they do an excellent job as well. Our life is a heck of a lot easier.
I bet it is. But it can't be held up. The sport can't be held up by one person who has the rights to some races. I think somebody should come around and do a separate calendar and squeeze them to so much that they play along. And if we can't watch the Tour de France, to me, cycling isn't the Tour de France. No. Bike racing is much bigger than that. And I love the Tour, but it can't just be the Tour. And it'll end up just being the bloody Tour de France.
In fact, this goes no further than this room. Cameras on. But my favourite riders are riders who don't just concentrate on the Tour de France.
Right.
I think that people... the Italian calendar, I'm in love with the Italian calendar because I loved Italy. I lived in Italy, and it's an amazing place. Spanish calendar, because I've lived on and off in Spain since I was 17. It isn't just about the French races, is it? And I like going to new places as well. And like you say, we had a conversation outside about one-day racing and things like that. So yes, there has to be a mix there, doesn't it? It can't just be about 3 weeks a year.
Imagine if you had a series of 30 races through the year, one-day races every weekend, and they included probably 20 of the ones that we have now, plus 10 new ones that take in key places in Europe potentially, or even further afield, because it does need to be more than a European sport.
It has to be a global thing, doesn't it?
It should be. But you have to make it worthwhile to go and do a block of racing, but maybe you do 8 races in the US, and then you do maybe 4 or 5 in Asia. But imagine that, and a narrative that ran through the season, and then you have these mad... I don't think you should have 3-week Grand Tours. I mean, the world does not need a 3-week bike race, does it? Yes. We've argued about this before, haven't we? And yeah.
I get paid per day, so I'm not coming on this one.
We need a 4-week Grand Tour.
Definitely.
Yeah. So I would reduce the tours, and I would have more focus on one days, and have climbing one-day races like Lombardy, and have sprinter-focused days if you have to, but they're not very interesting.
At least I'd say the sprint days have got hard, haven't they? I mean, Cav and sprinters of yesteryears would tell you that.
Yeah, definitely.
They've had to work hard.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and racing's much harder, isn't it? Yeah. But so I don't know anything, but if I had a magic wand, that's what I would do.
Well, the not knowing anything, that's not a fact. It is for fans. It's for everybody here, and that's why we do what we do in broadcasting as well. We try and make it accessible to everybody. So it's a big discussion, and we should keep having it, certainly. But anyway, back to what we're here for today. Your journey, the challenges. Obviously, you talked about the difficulties with the Team Sky thing. The joys and those moments like the Sanremo back then in 2013. I mean, that was a difficult day for everybody, apart from Gerald Seelek, I think, wasn't it?
Well, I finished that day and had a meeting with Dave Brailsford the next day in London, which was not a great meeting, I have to say. Dave doesn't like things not going well. And it was a very constructive meeting. and he said, "Listen, Simon, you're focusing on the wrong things," because we've basically been we've been making sticker albums like Panini albums we used to have as kids. We've been giving them off-bike clothing. We gave them, 800 pieces, 900 pieces per person of off-bike stuff and every type of sock you could ever want. And he said, the trouble is, Simon, you've been focusing on the peas, not the steak, and you need to focus on the steak first. And what he meant was the best shorts, the best jacket, the best hot, cold, wet, dry, have the best core racing kit for each of those 4 quadrants, which totally makes sense. We sort of thought we had, but we obviously hadn't, and the cold, wet, we hadn't cracked it. So then we went back to the drawing board and we focused on the steak and got the steak.
Very Dave thing to say.
Very Dave thing. He's probably saying it in the Man United dressing room right now.
Guys, it's not working at the minute.
Steak, not the peas. Yeah. Goals.
We will see how that goes. What was, apart from that then, what was the biggest difficulty that you had to face in those 20 years?
Biggest difficulty, I suppose coping with growth, because I was very passionate to grow as much as possible. I still think Rapha needs to grow way bigger than it is. I know that's probably unpopular with lots of people, but being a £100 million business is great. It's wonderful because we've got 500 staff and it's a great thing and lots of fantastic customers, but we're just a pinprick. If cycling can only have clothing brands worth 100 million quid, that's cycling's shit. So we need to make it so that cycling can reach more people and we can grow. And it shouldn't be outside of cycling, in my view. It should be within cycling. But growing and pushing to grow like that all the time is difficult. So if you're growing at 50%, 60% a year, people are holding on by the fingernails. And then when that stops happening, people are then holding on by the fingernails for other reasons. And
I was going to ask you this later, actually, towards the end, about your hopes for Rapha. But since we're here, how does Rapha get there? And how does Rapha grow? What are your hopes for the future of the brand?
Well, we were going to talk, as I'm sure at some point you'd ask me about mistakes. So 2 of the mistakes talk to this point. So one of my mistakes was hiring the wrong CEO. So when you're handing over as a founder, it's very difficult. It's really hard to find the person who's the right person. It shouldn't be you because you're leaving for a reason and you don't have the right qualities, but at the same time, you don't want to get a complete maniac who has all the wrong things. And it was during COVID, so that's an excuse, but not a good one. But I hired the wrong guy. Berta was around. In fact, Ali, most people here were around. Mike was around when we had our first CEO. When I stepped down, and it was a mistake, big mistake. So that was a real problem. And you've got to have the right leader. Yeah, and you've got to have the right leader that starts by leading the culture. And this guy had a different view, and he wasn't really wasn't a cyclist enough, and it became apparent he wasn't right. Lucky he didn't last very long, so that's good. And now we've got a great leader, I think, so that's good. And the other thing is to focus on the core business, and I think the extra mile is about doing everything brilliantly, but doing loads of stuff. And I make no apology for doing skincare that's fragrance with Von 2 and coming up with the RCC and clubhouses and all things which at the time my board said to me, really? You think you want to own retail? You're mad?
But is that not going back to what we're talking about, having a feeling and attachment with the brand?
Totally, yeah, totally. And they all worked. They all, in their own way, they worked, but it created a bit of a sprawling madness. And that's okay if it works, but if you lose sight of what the core is about, which is riding your bike quite hard, and you don't serve that customer well enough, and I think for a few years we didn't do that. So for Rapha to succeed, that's what we have to be the best in the world at, and I think we are among the best in the world, and we still can be the best in the world. But the other thing which nobody else can do is community, and lots of people here are part of the RCC, and that community is unbelievably powerful and real, and it's really important. It's the most important thing at Rapha.
It's wonderful to see, actually. Berta's always giving me stick because she said I'm stuck in a hole in my little village over the other side of the mountains. But it is wonderful to come and see you all here. I don't come anywhere near often enough, so it's brilliant work.
And if you're not a member, then you know where to sign up. But I think going forward, that's going to be really important because most people here have probably got lots of cycling kit. I've got 2 or 3 rooms of cycling kit. I don't ever need to buy any cycling kit ever again, obviously. And actually, there's something a bit disgusting about buying too much cycling kit. Don't let that hold you back for a while.
You didn't say that. By the way, there's a lovely aerial shot.
But there's, it's a bit distasteful to just push more and more product. So I think finding a way of adding value that isn't just the margin in a product, and I think through the RCC, which already it's a break-even operation, and it could drive a little bit of profit for the business, but it puts on things that are worth much more than clothing. It puts on these, moments and these experiences and the friendships, which are priceless. So I think that's where Rapha can properly win.
You mentioned the skincare there. One of the wild and wacky products. Do you have a favourite from that sort of range?
Well, from that range particularly, the shaving cream, which is still not available, and I'm sorry for those of you who shave your legs and those of us who I shave my neck. I can't shave my neck with Rapha skincare. But that was, if you're going to make skincare, you can make it smell of lemon or jasmine or something that some consultant tells you is what Aesop's now doing or whatever. You can do all that, but that's got nothing to do with cycling. So why not make it smell of something relevant? So me and my product guy did go to Vontu and we did collect those herbs and we did give them to a consultant who created the fragrance that is in that skincare. So when you're wiping it on your face, that's where it comes from. And it just, to me, it just makes sense. And we did maps inside the packaging and all, because it's the extra mile. Mm. And it makes some people laugh and like sort of, oh, well, how stupid, you idiots. But for other people, it's like, oh yeah, that's quite nice. I get it. That's why they've done that.
Any excuse to go ride more Vontu, I said.
And I had to go and do all this.
What a shame.
Yeah, it's tough.
I bet it was hard work.
It was.
Flamme Rouge for you when you were coming to the end. When did you know it was time and why to step down as CEO?
I'm not that old. I'd already worked for 15 years before Rapha and then 20 years or 18 years at Rapha at the time. And so I was kind of flat stick, I was quite tired. And my wife, we have a disabled son and 2 other kids, and Lucy had put up with all of that and had let me go off and do all this brilliant stuff. So I knew that I felt guilty that I had to give back to her, and I was tired and needed to, and I didn't want to be that, I hated the idea of being that guy who hung around too long, and I don't think I hung around too long, so that's good. Possibly hung around a bit, not long enough, maybe a year or 2, but I just didn't want to be that guy. And also I wanted Rapha to grow and to change, and I have a very particular view of cycling and racing and products and how you do brand and everything, and it's probably not the right view in total for what Rapha needs to do. In fact, it may not even be half the right view anymore. So I didn't want to be holding it to that for the sake of it. So that's where I thought, no, I've got to do this the right way. And I just messed up the hire, that's all.
It must be difficult. It must be like sending a kid off to university or in to get a job or something. You've no longer got the control.
It's horrible. Yeah, it's really, really horrible. It's like everything about me is in this business, and everything about this business is in me. So it's hard. It's hard, which is why it's so good when I know people in the company who I know will make all the right decisions, and their instincts will always be the right instincts. And the CEO now, Fran, her instincts are pretty much the same as mine. So that makes me feel very reassured. But it's hard. I now normally talk about Rapha as they.
Okay.
Weird.
That emotionally must be strange.
They. Yeah. I have to force myself to say it. I don't say we so much anymore, and that's probably good.
Right.
But but it's hard.
Obviously, your love for cycling and your business led you to create this. Having been 20 years in cycling in business, you've seen cycling, you've seen business. Biggest business lesson that cycling could give you?
Oh, that cycling could give me.
Yeah,
that's a good one.
Suffering, being out there,
that's
everything that you've always sold.
That one, there's an old thing about grit and determination. Sustained intensity is what wins. Not the best idea, not the magic moment or aligning the best team. None of those things, they're all important, but they're not on their own the most important thing. To me, the most important thing is, and on my bike, I have keep on keeping on all my bikes, painted on the seat stays, on the chain stay, because it's about sustained intensity. If you do the extra mile every hour of every day for 20 years, you get Rapha. If you do it, maybe I'll just do 4 days a week, you know, or maybe I'll do it as a project. I'll be sort of fractal. I'll have these multiple different things. You'll never create something like this because it's so mad. And I think when the going gets tough, you rely on that intensity to get you through. It's not a very popular, my kids don't like this very much. It's not a very popular bit of advice, but I do think sustained intensity is what matters. I mean, that, and then knowing the customer inside out and feeling what the customer feels. If you can be at that place, which I was, because the Rapha customer was 36 when I started Rapha, and I was 36, 37. And the average customer is probably still about 37, 36. But they're very different to me now, 59. But if you can be that person and you can build everything around that person, it's not going to be far wrong. Particularly if you're so intense about it, because you will learn and you'll find ways around things. So, yeah, that'll be, and that is cycling, isn't it? Yeah. I mean, it's a life skill. Our core values at Rapha are love the sport, you know, love what you're doing, suffer, which is this, think for yourself, and inspire other people. And I think that's my view of life as well.
That would be a wonderful way to finish. I've got one more question. And I'm just going to warn everybody that in a minute I'm going to open it up for questions if you want to ask Simon anything. Y en castellano también, si en inglés no le sale. One final question, one final bit of advice to the Simon of 20 years ago, what would it be? Starting out.
Probably what I just said. I think confidence is such an important thing. And I say it to my kids, and it's impossible. You can't tell somebody to be confident. You just can't do it. You can help them to be confident by supporting them and reassuring them and showing them opportunities and being there holding them. But you just going and doing it, you know, we're all going to be dead tomorrow. So, you know, give it your best shot. Give it your best shot and go for it.
Now that is a good way to finish, isn't it? Simon Mottram.